All right. Excellent. Hey, everybody. My name is Nathan Smith, and I'm the Digital Programming Coordinator here at the Central Arkansas Library System. Thank you so much for joining me today for Surf Secure. I'm excited to show you this, and I hope that I hope you really enjoy it. I hope you get a lot out of this class. We're going to talk all about staying safe online, and obviously that's a super important topic. So thanks for coming, and I hope that you really get a lot out of this. Before we dive in, a few quick things to mention. First of all, of course, as always, we've got a ton of cool stuff coming up around CALS, particularly in as far as virtual events, which we have got a ton of going on. The Six Bridges Book Festival is coming up, but before that even gets started, tomorrow night we are going to have a discussion with author oh boy, can't remember the last name now, but man, y'all, it's after lunch, I guess, is what's happening there. So the author that we're talking with tomorrow is Shugri Saeed Saul, and she is going to talk about her book, which is Coming of Age, The Last Nomad Coming of Age in the Somali Desert. It's always an interesting time with those book discussions. They're usually really, really cool. A lot of these, personally, I go into not knowing a whole lot about the authors, but it's always fascinating. So definitely join us for that tomorrow night. You can sign up for it by heading to cals.org, as always. And that one is actually on the front page. But if you go to events and you click on or move your mouse over events and you click on the find an event online button, you'll see a bunch of other cool stuff that we've got going on. So definitely check all that out, and join us for any and all of those things. Also, the other big thing that I always like to say at the beginning of class is I want to make sure that if you have questions, I encourage you to speak up and let me know. Don't worry about if you're asking a question, don't worry about whether it might be a silly question or if it could seem obvious to me or something like that. The point of a technology class is for you to learn something useful about technology. So if you're learning useful things about technology, even if we're not necessarily hitting every single little point on my outline, crossing every I, dotting every I and crossing every T, then things are going great. That is a successful technology class to me, one where you're learning something useful and that you're going to be able to apply in your life. On the other hand, a not so successful technology class, in my opinion, is one where you are hearing me talk, but what I'm saying, but you don't understand what I'm saying. So if you have questions, if you need clarification about anything that I'm saying throughout the class, please just let me know. That way I can make sure that we tackle it, and that you don't walk away confused. I want you to know exactly what we're talking about, so that way you can get the most out of the class. So feel free to interrupt by asking those questions, and we will everything will be great. How would one do that? Well, if you're joining me here in Zoom, what you'll want to do is find the little chat speech bubble button at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you're on a computer, click on that, and you'll see the little chat box slide out on the right-hand side. You can click there, type in your message, and press enter, and it should pop up for me, and I'll be able to answer it. If you are joining me in Zoom via the mobile app, it's pretty similar, but what you'll want to do is tap the middle of your screen And then tap on the More button when it appears in the corner. Then tap chat in the menu that pops up, and that'll get you to the chat area. So you can send your question in that way. If you're joining me via live stream, if you're on Facebook, what you'll want to do is put your question in the comments, just like you would comment on any other post in all of Facebook. And if you're joining me on YouTube, on a computer, what you'll want to do is look to the side of my video for the live chat box. And if you're on a mobile device, you'll want to look down below and tap on live chat there to check it out. So here we go. Let's go ahead and dive in. Let's see. Let me fire up the screen sharing. And there we have it. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is, well, okay. Let me kind of start out by talking about the general goal of this class. So a lot of times people are get a little worried sometimes about doing all sorts of different kinds of things online. And hang on, I've got a tech problem here. Just a second. Oh, that's strange. Okay, never mind. Guess we're good. Okay, good. So a lot of times people get worried about doing things online because they're concerned that they might end up accidentally accidentally exposing their personal information or things like that. And just like in any interaction in offline life, there are risks associated with anything you do. But in general, just like with offline life, we don't want to let that stuff sort of rule us. What we want to do is use common sense and make sure that make sure that we're not doing anything dumb, basically. And if we're able to if we're able to apply common sense and use some tools and techniques that I'm going to show you, then you'll be pretty safe online. Now, that's not a guarantee that nothing bad will ever happen, because that's not how life works. But using this kind of stuff, you're gonna make sure that you're not a tempting target, and kind of you're going to be doing the common sense things, kind of like if you leave your house, you're going to lock your doors behind you and maybe set the alarm system. So this is a class about how to lock your doors and set your alarm system online. Let's get rolling. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about is what we call social engineering. See, when things go wrong online, when folks get access to information that they shouldn't have, or when folks get a hold of your password, things like that, it almost never works like it does in the movies. Usually in the movies, when when there's some sort of hacker, they're sitting in a dark room behind their keyboard, and they're like typing away furiously, and it takes them 5 minutes, and then they're into the Pentagon and they can change whatever information they need to, or whatever the case may be. But most of the time, bad actors in real life online, most of the time aren't doing that sort of thing. They aren't typically taking advantage of weaknesses in the computer programming, or gaps in the firewall, or things like that. Usually what they're doing is they're trying to use our own humanity against us. And when they do that, it's a thing that we call social engineering. Social engineering just basically means using tricks and people's emotions to to manipulate them in order to giving up information that they shouldn't be giving up. So here's how that works in practice. It takes a number of different forms that we're going to talk about. The first one of those is kind of a more direct form, and it's something you may know about in other sort of avenues. Okay, so on the screen here, we've got kind of an example email here. And obviously a lot of this information is generic, but this is the sort of thing that you might see in a social engineering attempt. From grandson to grandma. Subject: help, house flooded. Hi, grandma, we had a pipe break and have to stay in a hotel for the next few weeks. Excuse me. Any chain you could help us cover the cost. It would be easiest if you just send it directly to my bank account number 123456789. Love, your grandson. Okay, so basically, so somebody who's trying to do this for real obviously is going to try and use a lot more specifics, but the general concept I think you can probably already see. What's happening is the scammer is emailing the grandma and saying, this is your grandson, I really need help, can you help me? And what this is designed to do is sort of generate some generate some strong emotions inside grandma and make her worry for her grandson and make her, stir up in her that willingness to help that, we all have to a certain extent. And certainly, when people we love are involved. And so, so that's what this is. And the hope of this scammer is that grandma will listen to that worry and that fear for her grandson and make an immediate decision. Yes, I will wire them the money. Here comes, $1,000, grandson. And, grandma's here to help you, to save the day. But of course, if she sends the money to that bank account, what's going to happen is the scammer is going to get $1,000. So, so when we get something like this, something that arouses a lot of emotion in us, one of the first things we need to do is stop and think about what could be happening, and what we may need to do to kind of check on this a little bit before we just dive in and make a snap decision. So grandma, for instance, after getting this email, might want to call the grandson and be like, hey, I got this email. Is that your house flooded? I'm so sorry to hear that. And if that's the case, if the house actually did flood, then she knows, oh, okay, well, this is legit. I can send this information on. All right, I can send the money on, and my grandson will actually benefit from this. But if she calls the grandson and she says, I'm so sorry your house flooded, and the grandson says, what? No, our house is fine. Then she knows that there's a problem, and she doesn't need to send any money to this person who's trying to scam her. Social engineering is a lot like that. Other kinds of emotions that people try to try to target in folks who are trying to scam are things like fear. So they might pretend to be say the IRS or the person's cell phone carrier saying, you owe us a bunch of money, and you're about to be in big trouble, or your phone service is about to be shut off, or something like that. Or they might try to kind of get the person to sort of, well, I guess that's the same thing. In any case, so they're trying to arouse strong emotions that will make it more likely the person they're trying to scam is going to make quick decisions that will turn out to be bad decisions. And so this is one example of how that might play out. Another example is something like this. This is associated with what's called a phishing scheme, Phishing. And phishing can take a lot of different forms online, but the basic idea is you're trying to create you're trying to pretend to be someone you're not, or you're trying to create a website that pretends to be something it's not. For example, here's a Facebook login page, right? And up here it says login to continue. There's an email. There's a blank for your email or phone number. There's a password blank. Now this looks like more like the old Facebook. They've changed their look a little bit since then, but still, it definitely looks fairly official. And back when the screenshot was taken, this was what the Facebook login page probably looked like. And so, folks might stumble across this page, or they might get a link that says someone's accessed your someone has gotten unauthorized access to your Facebook account. Click here to reset your password. And they click on the link in the email, and then they end up on this page. If you were to type your email address or your phone number and your Facebook password into this, not only would you not reset your Facebook password, but you would also be giving the scammers your email address or phone number and your Facebook password, so they would be able to get into your account. And so by doing this, because this is not really the Facebook login page, this is a page that lives on another website somewhere that's trying to pose as the Facebook login page and get you to enter your credentials so they will be able to access your information. Let me show you. Well, first of all, if you receive an email that says that, particularly if it's an email that seems to indicate that there's a major problem with one of your accounts, or that you owe a lot of money that you didn't expect to owe, or things like that, in those types of situations, you want to be particularly mindful not to click links in an email. So unless you're specifically looking for information, unless you're specifically looking for a link from someone, or it's someone that you sort of know or trust, you want to be very wary about clicking links in an email. And then once you get to a page like this, there's still a red flag here that can tip you off that there's a problem. You take a look at the top right here, we've got, so the address of this page is https://system.confirm.fbsettings-recovery.com/confirmation system.html. There's a little typo there. If you look at the top, so you'll notice, I'll get this red circle out of the way for a sec. If you look at the top here, this address is all sort of gray, except for right here where it says fbsettings-recovery.com, which is in black. And so it stands out a little bit. It's a little bit bolder than the rest. And pretty much all modern web browsers do this. What this is going to do is this is going to show you what's called the domain name of the address, of the domain name of the page that you're accessing as you're surfing the web. The domain name is basically the main address where a particular website or web page is located. So the domain name for the CALS website is cals.org. The domain name for Google is google.com. And the domain name for Facebook is facebook.com, not fbsettings-recovery.com. That's not anything. What that is somebody trying to make this look official, but not having the ability to create a page that's actually on facebook.com, because of course they're a scammer trying to pose as Facebook. So they've set up this page that with some very official sounding, computery sounding terms in the address, and and they're looking for people who will believe this is real and type their information in here. The best way to do this, let's say you do get an email that says, it looks like someone's, it looks like someone unauthorized has accessed your Facebook account, or your Facebook account was accessed from Oregon or something like that. And you're like, I haven't been to Oregon. Why would that be happening? If you get an email like that, rather than clicking a link inside the email, the best thing to do would be to come up here to this address bar and just directly type in facebook.com and press enter. Log in if you need to. And then you should, and then if there's a problem, you should be able to look in your account settings and things like that, and find, or maybe in your messages, and find some indication that there is actually a problem. If there's not a problem, then you probably won't see any indication that there's a problem, and you can know that it's okay. If you get something like that and you're worried about it, you might reset your password just in case. But again, don't follow the link to reset your password that comes in that email. Go to facebook.com, log in, and then go to your account settings and reset your password that way. That way you can be sure that that you're actually interacting with Facebook rather than a scammer who's made a web page that looks like Facebook. All right. Another kind of social engineering that you'll run into is what we call a tech support scam. This is a really common thing, and it's definitely worth talking about, particularly in the context of a technology class. Now, a lot of times what happens is this doesn't start on your computer. A lot of times what happens is you actually get a phone call on your phone, and the person on the other end says, hi, I'm so-and-so from Dell or from Apple or from Microsoft or from, Amazon or whoever. And they're like, we've detected that there's a virus on your computer, or something seems to be wrong with your computer, or, any number of things like that. Basically, there's some computer emergency that's happening. If you get a call like that, then basically right away you can be assured that they aren't able to detect anything that's wrong with your computer, and they are not calling for that purpose. Microsoft, Apple, HP, Dell, whoever, they are not going to be, they're not scanning your computer remotely to determine whether viruses are there. That would be very difficult for them to do, and it would not work very well. And so they rely on your computer having antivirus software to make that happen. By the way, the person who's calling you might say they're calling from the antivirus software company like McAfee or Symantec or something like that. Again, they are definitely not calling you from those companies. So no one's scanning your computer remotely for viruses. That's not the way that virus protection works on your computer. The way virus protection works is there's a program on your computer, and every so often that program goes through all the files on your computer and all the programs that are running and tries to figure out whether there's a problem on your computer. But it's not happening remotely. No one else, if there was a virus on your computer, even if it was a big major virus, then you would probably be the only one to know, because your antivirus software would pop up and say, hey, there's a virus here, let's take care of it. So if someone calls you and says that there's something wrong with your computer, or like that they've detected that your computer needs an update, the real companies don't know anything about that, and they won't be calling you for that purpose. So you can know right away this is not what they're calling about. what will usually happen then after, when they call you is, if you listen to them and you say, oh no, there's a virus on my computer, like what's wrong, can you help me? Or maybe they'll even offer, but they'll basically say, yes, we can definitely help you with this, it's no problem, we'll get this all sorted out for you. And they will walk you through the process of getting you remotely connected to your, or of getting them remotely connected to your computer so that they have control over your computer, ostensibly for the purpose of removing the virus from your computer. And they will also take your payment, because they will probably tell you that there is a charge associated with the service of removing the virus from your computer or doing the update or whatever they're trying to tell you that they're doing. So once they've taken your payment and they've walked you through connecting remotely to your computer, then they'll do a little tech support theater, basically, and try to do some technical looking things and open up a black window with white text in it, and copy and paste some things, and all sorts of stuff, movie hacker stuff. And then they will say, oh, okay, the problem's been resolved, you're all set, your computer is free of viruses, and you shouldn't have this problem again. And then you hang up, you're happy, and they hang up and they're very happy because they got because they got $100 or so of your money without actually doing anything for you. So if you get a phone call and the person on the other end says that your computer needs to be updated, or your computer has a virus and they've detected it and they're here to help you, it does not, they have not, and they are not. So just bear that in mind. Say, I don't think that's true, thank you very much, and hang up. So that's one possible form that this can take. They will also sometimes try to do this through a website instead. Occasionally, you'll stumble across a website like this, where it gives you a very ominous warning that there's something wrong with your computer. Your computer is at risk, and you need to call this tech support number immediately. If your computer has a virus, there's really no reason that you need to call anyone about that. If it will basically, if your computer has a virus, then antivirus software should be kicking in to take care of it, or at least to tell you that there's a problem. What the antivirus software will not do is tell you to call someone on the phone, because again, that wouldn't work very well to help you stop the virus on your computer. So it's given a toll-free number down here. If you call that toll-free number, then what's going to happen is basically what I just described with the tech support scheme, where they call you. The only difference is you've called them and told them that your computer has a virus, and so now they'll do the tech support theater and charge you money for nothing. So the only time, the biggest sign here is how dire this looks. If you look at this, it's got there's so much red. It says warning in huge letters. It's got this big old caution sign here. And if you've ever seen your computer detect a real virus, you'll know it doesn't look like this at all. It's not going to, for antivirus software, the point is not to scare you and make you take it seriously because you already have the antivirus software. The point is to kind of keep you calm and keep your stuff protected. And so you're going to get, if you have a virus, you're going to get a kind of a regular size pop-up box. It's not going to be huge full screen like this. And this is inside a web browser. If you look up here at the top, you're actually on just a website that's error 711971669.com. So your web browser cannot detect whether your computer has a virus or not. And if it does, it's not going to be telling you about it. Your antivirus software is going to be telling you about it. The way you avoid viruses is just make sure you have working antivirus software on your computer. If you have Windows, then one of the things that's built into Windows is Windows Defender. It's antivirus software that just comes with Windows. It's very it's very simple. It's installed by default. You basically don't really need to do anything. If you want to look and make sure that it's working properly, then you can just hit the little Windows key at the bottom of your keyboard, and just type security, and you should see Windows security. Click on that. Excuse me, and it should show you all of the settings. Should show you some little green check marks if everything's good to go. And if not, it will give you concrete steps that you can take to resolve it. So, and that software is really good actually nowadays. And so, so you don't have to worry too much about that, generally speaking. Thank goodness. Okay. So, another thing, which is another sort of social engineering problem that you might run into, are browser extensions and notifications. Another phrase sometimes that's used for when I'm calling extensions here is add-ons. But basically, it's the same thing. So what you've got is, in this particular situation, it says, this site says to continue the work of your browser, you should install the extension. And then you can prevent this page from creating digital logs. If you click OK, then it's going to get rid of this message, maybe. But down here, it says system alert, add extension in order to keep you in safe browsing. Now, the broken English there is actually your first indicator that maybe this person maybe this is something a little bit shady. So just bear in mind, like, if it's a well-established organization, then if it's someone, if it's an organization inside the United States, then they're going to have writers who know how to write in English. Keep you in safe browsing is not English. But if it's if it's an established organization from somewhere abroad, then they're going to have the resources to hire a translator who is fluent in English. So that is a red flag right there. In addition to that particular red flag, you've got you've got the overall situation here. Now, an extension or an add-on, what this is a piece of software that you can install on top of your web browser. So the current web browsers are Mozilla Firefox, Google Chrome, and Microsoft Edge. And if you're on an Apple device, Apple's Safari. Those are the 4 current web browsers. By the way, if you are using Microsoft Internet Explorer, please stop using that immediately. Microsoft Internet Explorer is extremely old and extremely unsafe because they haven't updated it in like 2 years at least. It is, it has been abandoned. So if there are any security fixes that have needed to be added in the last 2 years or whatever, Microsoft has not added them to Microsoft Internet Explorer. So if you have Internet Explorer, please do not use it under any circumstances. If you're on Windows 10, you should have at least Microsoft Edge on there. And if you're on you may have Chrome, or if you're on an Apple device, you can install Safari. Okay, so what these add-ons or extensions do is they add that additional functionality on top of Chrome or Firefox or Edge or whatever, Safari. And so, for example, there's an extension that I'm going to show you later that helps you keep up with your passwords. That's really handy. I will show you about that a little bit later, but the idea behind it is pretty straightforward. You just so it adds some additional functionality on top of what comes with the program by default. The problem with this is most of the time, if a website is prompting you to install this, you don't actually need to install it. And so what it's going to do, in extreme cases, a malicious extension will be recording anything that you type into your web browser. So you certainly don't want that. At a minimum, it may be trying to serve you some really annoying ads. So if a website prompts you to install an add-on or extension, I would say no, generally speaking, unless you know that it's something that you need to use and something that you trust. You can also find reputable add-ons and extensions in your web browser's web store or extension store, or whatever you may call it. In Chrome, it's the Chrome Web Store. In Firefox, you can come down and click on add-ons and themes, and it'll take you there to your list, and you can kind of browse for more pretty easily by searching up the top of that page. So definitely, if a website is telling you need to install an extension or an add-on, you probably don't. And if you really do, you can find that extension or add-on in the add-on store for your web browser, rather than, again, installing it directly from that website. And that is the safer way to do it if you decide you need to. So notifications are the other part of this. Web browsers have this ability to show you little notifications. Usually they pop up in the top left, or the top right corner of your screen. And they can be really useful for things like, alerts that you have a new email or things like that. There are a lot of useful things of that nature that a notification can do. But most of the time, when a website pops up and it says such and such a website wants to show notifications, there's a block and an allow option here. Most of the time, I would suggest clicking on the block option, because the vast majority of the time when someone gives you this, when a website gives you this prompt to set up notifications, what it's going to do, if it's a legit site that say like a news website or blog, something like that, then it's going to start giving you little notifications of like new stories that they've published and things like that. If it's something that you follow really closely, that might be helpful. But for the most part, it's probably not going to be anything like that. It's probably just going to be a general news site of some sort that you go and check occasionally, in which case there's no reason to have notifications. You'll just, when you are interested in reading some more of it, you just go to that website. No big deal. And so, a lot of us know from the age of smartphones, you can easily get overwhelmed by the number of notifications that you're receiving on your devices. So, so when you see something like this, think very carefully about whether or not you actually need notifications from this particular site. If it's, again, if it's like new email notifications, or if it's a chat service that you use for work, like Slack or Microsoft Teams or something, then you might consider allowing it. But otherwise, I would just default to clicking block here, because most of the time, like I said, it's going to either give you notifications too often about sort of about things that you probably won't care about that much, or just too many notifications in general. Or on some websites, what they're actually wanting to do is serve you ads via those notifications. And so you'll get these ads popping up in the corner of the screen that anytime your web browser is open, and that can be very frustrating. Okay, so that is extensions and notifications. Let's shift gears a little bit, and let's talk about some ways that you can improve your security online. We're going to talk about a few different categories in that vein here. The first thing I want to talk about is secure passwords. So passwords can be passwords are really interesting. They can be really easy, or they can be really frustrating. It just depends a lot on you and kind of how you deal with them. And there are a lot of pitfalls in creating a secure password. So what I'm going to do is make it kind of easy on you. Let's talk first about about sort of the features of a secure password. First of all, a secure password is long. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so this particular password is not a great one. It's letters in sort of sequential order, alphabetical order. So you certainly wouldn't want to use this. But you can, if you kind of, let's see, hang on just a sec. Let me make one little tweak here. There we go. Okay, that's what I meant to do. All right, so this is not great as a password. It's only 7 characters long, and it's in sequential order. Obviously, you won't be using a password like this. This is pretty bad. Because that password is so short, a modern computer might take up to only, say, 20.29 milliseconds in order to crack it. Computers nowadays, they're pretty fast, y'all. And so a short password like that might not take long to crack if they're trying to get in there just by trying a bunch of different combinations of letters, numbers, symbols. Okay, so a longer password, this one's 8 characters long. You could have a little bit more time, up to 5 hours, perhaps. It might take a modern computer to crack an 8-character password. For a 9-character password, it could take up to 5 days. Now, that's not to say that it will take 5 days as long as your password is 9 characters. That's simply not the case. But it could take up to 5 days to crack that password by brute force, as we say. In other words, by trying a bunch of combinations until you get the right one. For a 10-character password, it could take up to 4 months. So that's a significant improvement right there, from 5 days to 4 months. And if you think about the math involved, then it's probably clearer why this is. Each time you add another another character to the length of your password, you have a whole bunch of different combinations that are additional. It multiplies the number of possible combinations for your password, multiplies every time you add one more character to the length of your password. So it could take up to 4 months to crack a 10-character password. For an 11-character password, it could take up to 10 years. For a 12-character password, it could take up to 200 years. And again, if you have a long 12-character password, but you're not, but it's very simple, like the one over here, or if you have one and it just so happens that the computer trying to crack it gets lucky, then it might not take 200 years. It might get cracked in a minute. But but in general, the longer your password is, the more time it's going to take a computer to crack it by brute force, and therefore the less likely it is to happen at all. But okay, so if we have a password that's long, if it's 12 characters long, that could be pretty good. Most security experts actually recommend around 16 characters as a good password length. So you may want to extend that out a little bit more. But secure passwords also have a couple of other characteristics. One of those characteristics is that they're not easy to guess. So a lot of times folks use things that are very memorable to them. And things that are very memorable to us as humans, the way our brains work, are things like people we care about and times in our lives that are, extremely meaningful to us, or things like that. So, for example, some people will use their street address, or maybe their old street address or something like that. Some people will use their date of birth, or the date of birth of, say, their children, or the date of their wedding anniversary, things like that. Some folks will use the names of their children or of their pets, or of their spouse or something. And some people will just use their birthday. Some people will use all sorts of things. But the problem with that is that a lot of that stuff is really easy information to find out. So if someone is particularly interested in getting at your information, then they're probably going to have the means to figure those types of things out, and to try passwords that are more relevant to those pieces of information about you. If you think about it, for example, addresses that you've lived at, a lot of times those are in public records. The names of your people who are related to you, those are going to be public records as well. Birth records and oh my goodness, excuse me, y'all. Like birth records and marriage certificates and all those sorts of things. Ancestry.com and so forth. It's easy to tell who's related to who if you know the right places to look. Things like your pet's name. Maybe your pet's name is not in any public records, but if you use social media at all, then then you probably have some pet pictures on your on your profile, and they say, and there are captions below them that say, "Isn't Fido precious?" And so now they know, oh, Fido's the name of the dog. Let's try a bunch of different combinations based on the name Fido. And so there are a lot of ways to find out that type of information, because it's specific to you and because it's out there. Now, There are other types of information that are also out there, but they're not necessarily connected to you. And that is a thing that we want to, and that's the kind of stuff we want to aim for. I'm going to show you a way to create a password that's memorable, but is difficult to crack. One other thing to throw in here, though, is in addition to having just a lot of people when they're creating a password, they'll use just lowercase letters. What you want to do is have a mixture of lowercase letters, uppercase letters, numbers, and symbols. And some places that you create a password will force you to use those will force you to use a combination of all those things. But even if you're not forced to use them, I highly recommend doing it because it will make it easier to or because it'll make it harder for your password to get cracked. My goodness. Okay. So let's put all that together. What we're going to do is we're going to take a song and make a password out of it. Now, you might be thinking like a song, that's, if it's a song, probably there are lots of people who know it. So how could that possibly be secure? Well, there are millions and millions of songs out there. And even if it's a popular song, unless you are like well known for being someone who's really enthusiastic about this particular song, the chances of this person, of someone connecting you and a particular song out of the millions that are out there are pretty slim, right? As people who've grown up in the age of recorded music, we know lots and lots of song lyrics. So it's going to be super easy to remember. Let me show you how this works. Okay, so the password I'm about to show you is not a password I have ever used in any place, nor will I ever. It is an example password. Also, obviously, you should not use this password either. Use this method to construct your own. So here we go. Okay, so here's this song lyric. One is the loneliest number. I don't particularly like that song even, but it's a good example of what we're talking about. What I like to suggest is to make it easy to remember the number, that folks can use a password that has a number in the lyric somewhere. So this has a number in there, the number 1, right? So the first thing I want to do in order to make sure that I have numbers in that I have an actual numeral in my password is I'm going to change the word ONE to the number 1, just like this. Next thing that I'm going to do is take this and just shorten it down. Honestly, if I were to type all this out, obviously that's pretty long. So I don't necessarily want to type it out. I just want to use a little bit there. So now we've got numeral 1 is the loneliest, and that's a reasonable length. I think that's still like 17 characters or something like that. So it's plenty long, but it's not going to be a nightmare to type. Next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to capitalize a random word that's not normally capitalized. So normally you wouldn't capitalize the L in loneliest because it's not a proper noun and it's not at the beginning of a sentence. But in this case, I'm going to capitalize it because it's not a word that's normally capitalized. And so people are less likely to guess that this would be capitalized rather than just trying the lowercase version. Next, I'm going to add a symbol in between each of the words instead of the spaces, because a lot of places don't allow spaces in the middle of a password. And that gives you a way to add in a symbol. So instead of a space, I'm putting plus signs in here. And now that I've done that, I've got a nice password here. I have a number, I have a capital letter, I have lowercase letters, and I have symbols, all of those, all together. So I have plenty of variety in the types of characters that I'm using in my password. And beyond that, it's a long password. And because millions and millions of people know this song, and I'm not particularly well known for, or very connected with this song necessarily, well, other than offering this example in class and on YouTube, then it would be tough under normal circumstances for someone to guess that that would be a password and connect it with me. Now, again, don't bother. I've never used this password and I never will. And don't use it yourself, for goodness sake. But you can use this process. Think about a song lyric with a number in it and turn it into a password. And that'll be easy to remember, but it'll be difficult to crack. Cool. So the next thing I want to talk about is what we call two-factor authentication, or as Google calls it up here, two-step verification. It's the same thing. Sometimes people mix it up. Two-step authentication, two-factor verification. It all means the same thing. And the reason that it's called this, well, let's talk about how it works, and then we'll talk about why it's named that. So, actually, no, let's talk about why it's named that, because that'll help you understand how it works. So most of the time when you're signing into something on your computer or on your phone or whatever, most of the time when you're signing in, you're using kind of one-factor authentication or one-step verification. And what that is you're telling the computer or the phone or whatever, hey, it's me, and here's my password, right? So that's one form of authentication. That's one way that that the software that you're working with or the website that you're logging into can identify that you are you. But of course, if someone gets a hold of that password, they could also say, hey, I'm Nathan, here's my password. And then they've got the same access that I have, right? So two-factor authentication adds an additional form of authentication to your login, to your login process. So in this case, for example, so in the case of Google here, what I'm going to do is if I have it set up, let me show you this. I'll get when I log into my account, the first thing I'll do is I'll type in my email address or my username in the website. Then I'll type in my password as I normally would. But instead of it immediately taking me into my account, instead, it's going to send a little message to my phone. This form of verification is called Google Prompt. And so it sends that message to my phone. And on my phone screen, it'll show something like this. Is it you trying to sign in? It'll say my email address, and then it'll tell me what the steps are. So, or what kind of device it is and where they're located and when they're trying to sign in. It says Windows NT 10.0, but that's Windows 10, near Little Rock, Arkansas, USA. So that's here. And then it says time just now. So what I can do is tap yes on my phone, and then back on my computer, it will go, oh, they said yes, it's them, and it'll sign me in. So the second factor, or the second step in the verification, is not only do you know the password, it's also, do you have Nathan's phone? If you don't have my phone, then even if you know my password, you're not getting into the account because I have my phone, and I'm going to tap the yes button in the message that, I'll tap the yes button if it's me. I'll tap the no button if it's not me trying to log in, so you won't be able to get in. And that's what this does. This two-factor authentication or two-step verification is you use your password to you use your password to say it's you, but then you also use something that you have to indicate that it's you. Most often it's a smartphone. So I can go in. Another way that I can set this up is I can set up the Google Authenticator. So I go into, I download that Authenticator app. I go in and I scan the little barcode, the QR code here. And then inside the app, it's going to be generating these little 6-digit passcodes. And once I log in, so I put my email address, I type in my password, and then I type in whichever 6-digit code is showing on in the app right then. And that indicates again to Google that I have my phone. And so it's probably me trying to sign in. The most common way that you find this, which is not actually super secure, but is better than nothing still, the most common way that you find this is using text messaging. You probably experienced this logging into your online banking or things like that. They'll send a text message to your phone. It has a 6 or 7-digit code or whatever, and you type that in to your web browser on your computer. The text message way is not great because people can, if you're kind of a more high value target, people can kind of get into your sometimes they can social engineer their way into getting access to your text messages, or sort of essentially taking over your phone line so that they can get into your stuff. That's probably not super common for most of us, just normal folks out there, but it's definitely something that can happen. Whereas there's no customer service person to con behind these little authenticator apps or the prompt where it just sends me the yes or no question like this. You can even do things like in certain situations, there are actually physical devices that things that kind of look like a thumb drive, like one of these deals, but it's actually a digital security key. And so when you log into your device, you actually have to, in addition to putting in your password, you actually have to physically plug the security key into your device, and it will authenticate that way. So unless you have your password unless someone has your password and also has your physical security key, then they won't be able to get in. So there are a lot of different ways to do that. Anywhere that you can enable some form of two-factor authentication or two-step verification, I highly recommend it, because that is definitely a good that's definitely a good way to keep bad actors out of your stuff. Okay, another thing is using a password manager. So a password manager, we talked about ways to create a way to create a secure password that's easy to remember. And that's a really useful thing to be able to do. But we use so many different websites and services and apps and so forth that sometimes it's not really very practical to remember all the passwords that you need. Now, this is super duper important. Please hear me on this. A lot of people get around that by reusing their passwords over and over again. You should not do this. It's very unsafe to do that. You want to make sure that you aren't reusing your passwords. If you do, what'll happen is if someone gets a hold of your password from one service, then they also have your password from all the other services. And so really quickly, a lot of your stuff can get compromised, particularly if, say, that, if somebody gets a hold of your, of your Twitter password, that's not great. But if your Twitter password is the same password as your online banking, then they now have access to your Twitter account, and they have access to your online banking. So it's really, it's really easy to get, it's really easy to have a serious security breach by reusing your passwords over and over again in different places. But obviously, like I said, that poses a problem with the number of different apps and services that we use. So the solution to that is what we call a password manager. The password manager that I personally use is called Bitwarden. It's really handy. It's free, and the software is open source. So so security experts are actually able to look at it and see kind of how it works and what makes it tick, and make sure that it's actually safe. So the way a password manager works is your passwords are stored with that service, but they're encrypted on your computer. So, and the password manager service doesn't store the master password that you use to encrypt all the other ones. Only you have that. That does mean if you lose the master password that you use to encrypt all the others, then you lose access to your password manager, and that can present a big problem. But assuming that you keep up with that master password, what's going to happen is whenever you log into your password manager, you're going to be able to access all the other passwords that you have stored for all those different services. And because you're able, and so that way you don't have to remember the passwords. You don't have to write them down in a little notebook that you keep with you all the time. You don't have to write them down in a notebook that you keep in the desk next to the computer. You don't have to write them down anytime ever. And if you need one, you can just look it up in the password manager, or because these password managers come with a web browser extension or add-on, like the ones I was talking about earlier, because they use an extension, all you need to do is click a little icon and click on the account that you want to sign into, and it will automatically fill in your username and password there. Because it's only encrypted on your because it's encrypted on your device before it's sent anywhere else, no one has access to it. The people who work for the company that makes the password manager, they don't have access to your passwords. Even if someone submits even if someone has a warrant or something for your passwords that they serve to the password manager service, the password manager service can give them the blob of encrypted information, but they can't give them the actual passwords, and basically at that point, whoever's requesting the passwords would then have to go in and crack it themselves like a hacker. So in practical terms, it's going to keep pretty much everybody except for you out of your passwords. One of the other nice things about using a password manager, though, is because you don't have to remember your passwords for most of your passwords anymore, you can then use completely random passwords. And in fact, the password manager will generate random passwords for you and then remember them. So you don't have to know your password, write it down, or anything else. Generate a random password, and then it will just fill it in for you. And you never have to remember the passwords after that, except for your master decryption password. So I highly, highly, highly recommend using a password manager. Not only does it make things more secure, it makes your life so much easier. So, so please use a password manager. Bitwarden is great, but there are a lot of other ones. LastPass is another popular one, although not as useful as Bitwarden anymore. And there are some other paid ones with some more advanced features, things like Dashlane and stuff like that. So use a password manager. Very important, very easy, and makes your life better. Okay, another extension that I want to tell you about just briefly is Privacy Badger. Privacy Badger is created by the folks at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's a digital civil rights nonprofit organization. And they, in my opinion, do a lot of great work on a variety of technology related topics. But this is also one of the things they do is create this browsing extension called Privacy Badger. And what Privacy Badger does is it looks out for all the different little methods of tracking that that your different websites use to create an advertising profile for you and things like that. And when it finds those little trackers, it disables them. And so that way, number one, it speeds up your web browsing because you don't have to load all these additional trackers and send a whole bunch of information to third parties who don't need to know, anything about you in the first place. And it keeps your privacy, a lot more locked down. So it just sits in the background for the most part. I typically don't encounter too many problems when I surf from site to site using it. But if it causes a problem on a particular site, you can just click on the icon and click disable Privacy Badger on this site and you're good. So I definitely recommend that as well to keep unauthorized eyes from snooping on you. All right. So one last tool that I definitely recommend, that you look into is what we call a VPN, a virtual private network. The way VPNs work is basically they are sort of a tunnel for your traffic online. So think about, for example, visiting a coffee shop or something where they have free Wi-Fi. That's great. It's really useful. It's nice to be able to sit in the coffee shop and work on your laptop or whatever. At least under normal non-pandemic circumstances. But unfortunately, when you connect to their Wi-Fi, if it doesn't have a password or some kind of security mechanism in place, then the information that you're sending back and forth between you and the websites you're visiting is not necessarily encrypted. Now, some of it is, but it's not the signal that you're sending that's going from your laptop to the coffee shop's like wireless router or access point or whatever. That signal is not encrypted. And so anything that's flowing over that connection is going to be, could be snooped on by either fellow coffee shop customers or the coffee shop itself, if they kind of run the internet service or have a lot of, run the sort of IT infrastructure, or by the coffee shop's internet service provider. And all that stuff can be used to serve you ads or can be used to compromise your privacy or security in other ways. So when you're out and about somewhere where there's an unencrypted internet connection like that, using a VPN will help you stay secure. What happens is, rather than sending any information that you send out, rather than sending it directly from your computer to the website that you're communicating with, instead, with a VPN, any information you send out is encrypted, and it's sent to the VPN service. The VPN service then sends the information to to the website that you're visiting. And that allows you and so that makes sure that basically your stuff is not exposed on your side of things, and you're able to communicate more securely when you're out and about. This is particularly useful for if you're traveling to, say, countries that aren't necessarily as keen on personal rights as we are here in the United States, um, and um, and pretty much anywhere that you could be sort of snooped on because your internet connection is unencrypted. Folks will also sometimes use it to access content that's not normally available to them in their country. For example, you can set up your VPN so that you can access so that you can access the Canadian version of Netflix instead of the American one or whatever. Some of these services don't really approve of or appreciate that, but it is something you can do with your VPN as well. And that is pretty much it. Are there any questions before we wrap things up for today? All right, I don't see anything. If you do have questions, please just let me know. You can shoot me an email. My email address to use is digital@cals.org. That's digital@cals.org. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. And